in tutorials, like a lot of tutorials, they're like talking like this. So now we're gonna do this, and now we're gonna do that. Da, da, da." I mean, no offense, but I I kind of high and low pitch my voice,
Yeah.
and add emphasis on certain parts, and maybe throw in a joke or two and some sarcasm while we're at it. And you can make anything fun to watch.
Welcome everyone to a new episode of the Zero to Play podcast. I'm your host Carla Duke, and today I'm joined by Sam Yam. Sam is a content creator and founder making Unity tutorials to an audience of over 23,000 subscribers on YouTube. Today we'll be talking about her journey into games, leaving corporate to pursue indie dev full-time, and what the future holds for her. A big thank you to Prismatic Studios for being our Season 6 sponsor. More on them later, but for now, sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode of the Zero to Play podcast. Welcome, Sam, to the show. Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
So this is another interview that's me going deeper into the kind of game dev YouTube scene and interviewing kind of content creators that are also making tutorials and making indie games. It's a real cool meld of different skills, and you have an amazing community. So I'm really grateful to have you on and to be able to hear a bit about your story and your journey. So
Mhm.
the first question that I want to ask, just to kind of kick us off and get right into the deep end, is what was that moment for you that you realized or that you decided that you wanted to kind of leave the traditional kind of games path and pursue game dev slash being a founder? What was that moment that kind of made you switch and want to go down this new path?
Well, I was at my software engineering job. Graduated and I started working during COVID. So it was very not exciting. I don't know the opposite word for that. Unexciting. And it's just, I spent a whole year in my room doing something that it was cool, but I wasn't really like passionate about. And it just felt like the days were passing by. And I've always wanted to make games since I was a little kid. When I saw my first video game, I got into coding because I wanted to make games. And I also started my YouTube channel during COVID. So while I was working, I was just like, that's it. Done.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
built up some savings. I'll live with my mom for a while, and just
yeah, yeah.
go dive in deep and see what happens. So
Yeah, that's awesome. So it's been almost 2 years now, and you're still kicking on. So I suppose you feel like that was the
one
right
year.
decision.
Yeah.
One year.
1 year. Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome.
Totally. Best decision I've ever made.
Yeah, so a lot of kids are probably at home now looking at your tutorials as they're kind of pursuing game dev as a potential career. But you
Hmm.
studied computer science at university, and I'd love to know if you found that experience like boring or if you found that experience valuable. Would you go through that path again, knowing what you know now?
Personally, I would go through the same path just because I lacked a lot of structure in my life. Um, like I needed to learn adult skills, and I also needed to learn how to learn because in high school it's different. You just learn to memorize it, and then you just take the test, and you forget.
Yeah,
And yeah, I had wanted to learn coding, but I was undisciplined, so I never actually did it. So I think it was valuable in that sense for me. The classes themselves, I didn't think were anything special, honestly. A lot of them I didn't even go to. I skipped a lot. You should not do that, kids. Um,
yeah,
yeah, because a lot of teachers would just not talk about what they're supposed to be talking about, and you're paying a lot of money for it. So I don't think it's necessary at all. Game dev, I learned by myself. I just learned coding through school, and most of it you learn on your own when you do projects outside
yeah.
of the classes. So you have to learn how to Google everything.
Yeah, so if you were advising someone that is maybe the age that you were when you did your computer science degree, but is like in today's time, would you recommend that they do like a game programming specific course, or was the kind of computer science a good broad level of understanding?
Um, so game dev is a whole nother ballpark, I think. And I can't really give a good input on this because I haven't taken like a dedicated game course. Like I
Fair
took
enough.
one or two game classes in college, but it's like very introductory and I already knew how to do most of the Unity things they taught.
Yeah.
Honestly, it depends on the person. I think science gives you a more well-rounded experience and you can also find more you might be more interested in something else in computer science, and because of that education that you have, you'll be able to pursue that easier. So for example, I learned that I also like web development, and
Mhm.
because of my experience in college, I can do that more easily and learn more easily. Whereas game
Mhm.
dev, you might be limited to game dev, but if that's all someone wants to do, then
Mm.
you know
Yeah.
it's the obvious choice for them.
Yeah, fair enough. No, that's a really good way to put it. I also see that you had a lot of experience working in AR and VR, and from what I can see, you're not really in that kind of niche of the industry anymore. Is that the case? Do you still feel like you are a part of it in some way?
No, I don't think I'm really a part of it anymore. I was totally into it. Like even like years before Facebook was a word.
Yeah, yeah,
um, but yeah, I just worked with it for so long that I guess I got tired of it because it's such a hassle to put it
yeah,
on, put it off, and then with my glasses, every time it gets stuck, and then my neck isn't like as strong, I guess, as most people, so like it cramps my neck after 10 minutes, and I was just like,
yeah.
"It's not there yet."
That's a good point. So yeah, I don't think I've spoken to many people that kind of were very early on in the AR VR space and then kind of have put it behind them. Do you see yourself potentially going back into it once it is a bit more mainstream or a bit more advanced? Is that what you're hoping for?
Yeah, I mean, I go with the flow. Whatever
Yeah.
interests me at the moment, that's what I pursue. I love immersive tech, so I definitely would probably get in on it when the headsets are lighter and glasses supported, or maybe
Yeah.
putting contacts in there somehow.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
they have that.
So and with the kind of things that we're seeing now with, Apple getting into the space and things like that, do you think that time is soon, or do you think it's still kinda like 5, 10 years down the line before you'd be interested again?
Um, I don't know if 5 to 10 years, maybe like 2 or 3. It'll get to a point. But, like, the Oculus Quest 2 is still really pretty. I haven't tested it, but I'm sure I've heard it's, like, still heavy.
Yeah.
And it's just bulky. We're not at the stage yet. They're working on it, but it's difficult to make a one headset for everyone
Mm,
that takes into account everyone's, like, eye pupil differences
mm,
and, the space that they're in, new mapping technologies. But
yeah.
I think once they figure it out, I don't know, I think, like, 3, 4 years probably. I'll probably be
Yeah.
interested.
Yeah, that's cool. I love your attitude. You got such like a, like you said, go with the flow, kind of see what interests you. I love that. It's a real kind of casual vibe, but you've managed to build a really uh strong community over YouTube, and you've done an awesome job of like connecting with other content creators in the space.
Thank you.
I I wanted to ask you about so going deeper into kind of that side of your life right now. I've heard good things about your kind of your input system tutorials in Unity, and like I'd love to know from your perspective, like what is the content that you've created that's like the most valuable that you think to people wanting to learn. It's mostly been in Unity, right?
Yeah, it's all been on Unity so
Yeah.
far. Just some live streams in Unreal, but nothing substantial for that. I think it's not the topic itself that I'm doing that's the most valuable. Like the input system, I did those videos because at the time I knew that it was a niche and it wasn't well covered. And I was
Mhm.
like, well, input's pretty important, you know? Um, so I got my initial audience from that. But I think what attracted people more is how I explain things.
Mm,
'Cause, I tend to, like, explain why we're doing what we're doing, and, not just saying, "Here's the code," but, "Here's the code, this is why we're writing it, and this is what it's doing," and kind of go in depth. So people actually understand what they're doing, and they're not just copying from a tutorial and just erasing it from their mind, and then they can't do anything after because they don't know how to change what they just
yeah.
did.
Yeah, it kind of makes me feel how you mentioned school earlier is just about mesmerizing stuff, and then you forget it the next day. I feel like you've really taken on that philosophy and tried to make the intent come through. Can you talk a bit more about that? Like, how do you like? Can you give an example of something that you think is worth understanding as like a fundamental compared to just copying the code?
Uh, let's see, try to think of an example right now. Uh,
Yeah, or like, what's
there's
the
so
what's
many.
the what's the, one of the latest videos or tutorials that you've done that you think kind of explains a
Um,
fundamental?
oh, well, the scriptable objects video that I did got a lot of views, and so I saw that a lot of people explain scriptable objects in a way, but my brain, like, I can't when people talk to me, sometimes I blank out. Like, it's just like a stream of information, and I just don't process what they're saying. So it takes me a while, um, and then I have to kind of break it down in my head to, like, the basic building blocks, and I think that's what helps me understand the base fundamentals.
Mhm.
And so I think of it like in the scriptable objects video, most people kind of dive right into scriptable objects, but I decided to kind of explain the concept beforehand with images and
Mm.
kind of like a goofy little image, like a goofy doodly figure there, and explain what it is, like, and why do we need it before
Yeah.
actually diving into to the code. And then I provided like examples as to why we would need this solution. Like I gave four different examples and I iterated on each one. So like this is how normal people, not normal people, normally people would do it, but then it's inefficient this way. So then they would do it this way, but it's also inefficient this way and then this and then we arrive at this solution. So kind of like the
Yeah.
whole thinking process, like why would we need this and
Yeah.
how we arrive at that conclusion.
It's like the history behind it, that sounds like a very, like, advanced it's probably a lot easier for you to just, like, have the title and thumbnail is the exact same thing and then just kind of doing it in, like, an hour. But I feel like you're really putting in the time to research and to understand what it means to you and what it means to like programmers. That's really cool. What does your process look like? Is it quite similar for all of your videos? In terms of, yeah, like how you research or come up with an idea, and what how do you decide what it is that you want to do next?
Well, my ideas, I have a huge nope, like with all my ideas that I've just compiled over like the year or the 2 years that I've been doing this. And usually it's like things that I do myself. And then I spend like a million hours doing because there's not a lot of resources on it. Or like, because it's usually the newer technologies like input system or cinemachine at the
Mm,
time where there was no good documentation and I was lost most of the time. So I usually bang my head on it for a long time, and then I decide that I should probably make a video on this because I recognize there's a need for it and it's niche. So it would help me as well grow the channel. And I kind of blanked out on the rest of the question.
yeah,
I
no,
got
that's
sidetracked.
well, following on from that, it's kind of like what your process was, but maybe a question I can ask
Oh,
is, do you have any ideas for other uh, videos that you want to create down the line, and do you want to speak on them a little bit?
um, sure. So I want to do more tutorials on the input system. I want to cover multiplayer. So I
Mm,
actually, um, the Patreon goal that I met like 6 months ago was to make the multiplayer series, and I've just haven't been able to do it, but it's like one of the next things I'm doing. I don't think right now the the multiplayer thing videos that are out there don't explain the concepts. So,
Mm,
like they just dive right in. All right, we're connecting the host to the client. And I'm like,
done.
what's a host?
Yeah,
What
yeah.
is a client? Like, um so I'm definitely going to focus on setting it up so that people can actually learn the concepts and then understand the video.
Yeah.
And I also want to do more streaming. I think that that'll help, boost retention and kind of engage with the community more. And yeah, I really want to keep working on that Unreal parkour game I was making and learn Unreal again. But there's so many things I'm doing.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's
um,
awesome. I mean, it's great that you've got ideas to work from. Um,
yeah.
I think when it comes to content, I feel like there's depending on who you talk to, they value entertainment and education as the two kind of pillars of what they want to achieve with their content. I'm getting
Hmm.
a lot of sense that you really care about the education side. What would you give if you had to split it like out of 100? How much would you put towards entertainment, and how much would you put towards education in terms of what you value?
So by entertainment, do you mean like those kind of devlog videos or the game dev videos where like I made this game?
Well, I don't know, like,
And
I'd say the topic of, like, memes and making things that are, like,
yeah.
yeah, can go viral or, like, are fun and, like, goofy, I'd say would maybe fall under the entertainment category. Um,
Hmm.
whereas, yeah, like, education is sounds more like someone walking through
Yeah.
exactly step by step.
I mean, I have those kind of videos on my list as well, but I always end up putting it off for the educational video. I don't know,
Yeah,
I just get drawn more to the tutorials aspect, but I do want to do more of those. I'd probably say like 20 or 30% to the entertainment
yeah.
side and the other education.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. For example, that video that you did where um, that collaborative video where you passed a game from one dev to another. Like, what was
Yeah.
that experience like? Did you enjoy that?
Yeah, I actually really enjoyed it. It was my first collab video
Yeah.
on the channel with other YouTubers. So I didn't know what to expect. And I just got this game that I had to like learn all the code from scratch in 3 hours or in a day. But I did it in like three hours or so. I'm being honest. Um I honestly I had a lot of fun and I do want to do more collabs because it was nice interacting with other YouTubers.
Yeah, yeah.
Um yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. Are there any other kinds of collabs that you think are interesting in the space? Or I mean, that's one example. Another one is just like people devs like making a game with like a kind of like a mini game jam where you have a theme
Mhm.
and then you put it together. Are there other types of collabs that I might not be aware of what's kind of trending or what's happening in the space?
Mm, I think that's one of the big ones, the game jams. I
Mm.
saw Bargy had done a podcast with some other game dev YouTubers on a new channel. I can't tell you the channel name because I don't remember. Um, and just streaming with other YouTubers as well. I think um, damn, I forgot James.
Yeah.
Why? I forgot his name. But he streams with other YouTubers and discusses topics on game dev.
Gotcha.
Um, I'm not aware of any others right now.
Yeah. No, that's
It's
cool.
usually those kind of videos. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. That's awesome. One thing that an episode that I've recorded that isn't out yet on the podcast is with Dan Pos, who's another game dev YouTuber, and one conversation I really liked having with him was the the idea of a game dev YouTuber and how that differs to kind of an indie dev that's maybe not thinking about content behind their games. Um, are you making games on the side I'm kind of curious to know what that kind of balance is between being a content creator and making tutorials, and then wanting to pursue indie dev and hoping to try to make that into your career. What's
Mhm.
that balance like for you?
So that balance is very difficult to achieve. Usually, a lot of us are kind of faced with you have to choose one or the other, like to spend most of your time with. Because making an indie game takes a lot of time, and making a YouTube video also takes a lot of time, especially like a well edited one.
Mm,
So, mm, personally, I am not working on any games right now just because I do not have the time, but I really want to.
mhm,
And if I would do it though, I would still focus more on YouTube because I personally think for me, building an audience is important, more important than actually making an indie game outside. Although
mhm.
it kind of goes hand in hand for my case because it helps with the tutorials, but it's just what you value, I suppose. And I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
marketing is very important. So once you have an audience, if you start to make a game, you already have people interested. So
yeah, yeah. No, it's definitely an interesting discussion. Just looking at the kind of questions that I have here. Um, do you have like a tutorial that you've created that you'd recommend to someone just starting to learn game dev now? Um, maybe like within Unity as a game engine, or is there anything more like high level with just game dev in general? Like, what would you have a tutorial that you'd recommend to them?
my tutorial, my first tutorial or the second tutorial I made is actually I made so once I started this YouTube channel, I made a 10 episode mini series for beginners,
Cool.
kind of introducing them to Unity. So it's all the way back in the video list.
Yeah,
If you
I
put
saw
oh
that
this
on TikTok actually. I think you posted them on TikTok.
ah no, TikTok was a separate thing that I was trying to
Oh,
do.
okay.
TikTok, I was trying to do like little 1 minute videos, which I still want
Gotcha.
to continue. I just don't.
Yeah, TikTok strategy is an interesting one. I've spoken to a few game devs, not really game dev YouTubers, but just indie devs that have found some really good success in their audience through TikTok, which
Mhm.
yeah, which is an interesting platform for everyone, I think, these days.
Yeah, I think it's one of the biggest platforms that you can get a large audience with quickly currently,
Yeah,
like the
yeah,
best one right
definitely.
now.
So you mentioned off the podcast that you've been on YouTube for over 10 years, and I'd love
Mhm.
to know from your perspective how has YouTube as a platform changed for you compared to kind of when you started? I mean, the kind of videos you made probably changed as well, but do you have any perspective on kind of how the platform's changed that someone just starting out today might find value in understanding?
Like the actual YouTube
Yeah,
platform or
yeah, like, do you think there were communities, back then was a lot harder um, to get an audience or
I think it was actually easier
yeah,
because there was less
less saturated?
competition. Yeah, if you started way, way back in the day, like if you made any sort of video, you can get tons of views. Like my first video ever got over 300K views, which I'm
Wow.
not gonna mention because it's embarrassing. But it was just me like fooling around and I just posted it and it went up like crazy. So I think right now it is definitely oversaturated, but if you find a good niche and you're passionate about what you're doing and you have good editing
Mhm.
quality, I think you still have a good chance right now. And not only YouTube, but using other platforms as well, like TikTok or
Yeah, yeah.
Twitter.
Yeah, what I saw that you made a series about, recreating Line Rider, which is a classic Flash game, which I loved seeing that, just for the nostalgia's sake. What was the hardest part about making that game, like, recreating it?
Um, it's more the code structuring the code in a way that's easy for the tutorial. Because I can write the code for line writer in like the update function of Unity that runs on every frame. But, then it would just be full of code in like this
Mm,
one function. So it was more at the time, it was more of finding out how to best format like this little game so that it's
mm.
easy to understand and that it's performant and good code quality.
Yeah.
That's as much as I can remember because it was over a year ago. So
That's I mean, the fact that you care about it being performant, is I think a really interesting quality when talking to game dev YouTubers, because if you're an indie dev that's not worried about content, I feel like you would care about the performance and things, but if you're trying to just make a video and kinda sell people on the thumbnail, um, but that's what I'm really liking about how this conversation's going, is that you do really care about the concepts and the overall kind of stability of the
Mhm.
project. It's not just about yeah, it's like you're not just selling like a cheaply made yo-yo. You're actually wanting to like teach people how to make like a really
Yeah.
good quality. I don't know why yo-yo came to mind, but yeah, no, I think
Yeah.
that's a really cool quality.
Thank you.
Do you find that it's hard to talk about in a video? Because I think that's one thing, going back to the education versus entertainment. There's a lot of work when it comes to game development that's boring, that isn't necessarily interesting to watch, and it's kind of very like math heavy, very technical. Do you find that there is an element of game development that is hard to um, like make interesting, but is a very important part?
Mm, I mean, I'm a nerd, so I think I think it's all interesting. I think the presentation is important. So like in tutorials, like a lot of tutorials, they're like talking like this. So now we're gonna do this, and now we're gonna do that. Da, da, da." I mean, no offense, but I kind of high and low pitch my voice,
Yeah,
and add emphasis on certain parts, and maybe throw in a joke or two and some sarcasm while we're at it. And you can make anything fun to watch if if the presenter is, interesting enough, I think.
yeah, yeah,
And I like try to explain it too. So I think that's also interesting. It's not just like, oh, do this and this and this in a monotone.
yeah, yeah. I
No
feel like you'd
offense
be a,
to
a really good
monotone
teacher.
people.
I feel like you'd make a good teacher. Is that a career path you've considered?
I actually got invited by a university to be a teacher. And no, I don't know.
Well,
I don't think I do that. I don't know.
I'd say the teachers of the future are, people that know how to make engaging YouTube tutorials. Because in a way, people could just like teachers could play your videos in class to teach something, or kids
Yeah,
can
that's what a lot
learn.
of teachers do.
Yeah, exactly. So you are a
Yeah.
teacher. That's just you're a new generation of teacher.
Unlicensed.
Yeah, Unity. We need a Unity partnership here.
Certi- Well, technically, I'm part of the insider program, so I guess in a way,
Yeah, I'm sure Unity see the value in all the content creators that make content for them.
yeah. No, they're very active in the community. Then,
That- This episode of the Zero to Play podcast is brought to you by Prismatic Studios. Prismatic Studios is an Unreal Engine technical consultancy based in Auckland, New Zealand, focusing on development services for clients that need support prototyping, implementing and testing features, or adding development resources to existing projects. With their expertise using Unreal Engine, they can help consult and work alongside your teams to avoid common pitfalls that are so common in software and game development these days. Reach out to them today for a quote or free consultation. A link to their website can be found in the description below. Back to the show. I haven't heard too much about this, but I'd love to know if you're willing to talk about it. Is what some of these companies, or if it's just one company or multiple companies that you are kind of running, as well as the YouTube channel. Could you elaborate a bit on what kind of projects you're doing on the side?
sure. So, this year I got into the blockchain crypto space, which is like if you tell that to any game dev, they'll just ban you off the face of the And I used to believe it was a farce too, but then because I didn't actually know much about it, it's just like I would see what everyone else is saying, that it's shit, that it's a
Mhm.
scam. Sorry, excuse my language. You
Yeah,
might
yeah.
wanna cut that
No,
off.
it's good.
Um, and so, I believe that, and then, I actually did research into it, but the technology itself is quite fascinating how it works, and I saw a lot of uses in the future for the actual technology, not all the scams that are going around right now. That's not important. I'm talking about the technology itself. But I think there's a big hindrance because of the misconceptions people have about the space, um, that have that they're not willing to go into it. So, I could have gone into it 3 years ago, and I didn't not because I just, didn't have enough information or I didn't know about it. So, I'm making an educational platform to onboard people to Web3, which is what it's called, like the next generation of the web.
Mhm.
And I'm focusing not on technical developers off the bat. We're starting easy, assuming no knowledge, and then we'll ramp them up kind of like from zero to hero so that they understand and they enter the space with confidence. And
Mhm.
it's called Anza Academy. So, like, if you say that in like any game dev thing, they'll just hate you straight out, and it's and, with reason because there are a lot of scams,
Yeah.
and there are a lot of there. It's called sorry, I accidentally opened a tab for some reason. I just subconsciously I opened a
Yeah, yeah.
tab. I'm like, what am I doing? Um, and there's something called rug pulls, which is when like
Yeah,
some people make projects and then they get all the money and they leave,
yeah,
and then they leave all the people that bought their project kind of stranded and
yeah,
waste their money. And I think when there's a new technology like this is bound to happen. Scams and people taking advantage and putting out things to make a quick buck. Like
yeah,
some indie games do that too. Make like quick buck games, like the mobile games. But it's
yeah.
more of the technology. Like before VR, everyone was like, "This is a scam."
Mm.
Like, and now I'm seeing this with this space where everyone's like, "This is a scam," and now VR is like this huge thing where Facebook is like, "This is the future,"
Yeah,
and it's yeah.
sorry, finish your thought
uh,
if you want.
I
Um,
forgot. It's okay.
so I kind of feel like it's similar with the when free to play was kind of a new mechanic as well, and when mobile kind of really people still don't really take mobile seriously as a platform for games, that are kind of diehard PC gamers or
Mhm.
console gamers. But mobile has proven, I think, to be a platform that is and the free to play model as well as a
Yeah.
mechanic that is here to stay and has kind of
Mhm.
helped lift the industry. It is a very touchy topic, and I can understand why there is like a line between the kind of two hats that you wear. I do think there's a lot of stigma at the moment. I joined a Web3 company a couple months ago as a games producer, and
Okay.
I understand a lot of the stigma. I was really concerned about my reputation as well. Um,
Mhm.
but what I feel is, one, I do find that technology really interesting and is something that I want to learn about. But
Mhm.
also, I want to, if this technology has a shot, I think it's important that people that do have a traditional games experience join the space to explore it. Because I think that's what's
Mhm.
happened in the last few years is the only people in the space were technologists and um the finance kind of industry came on early, and then
Yeah.
art's kind of been in the last couple of years. But I'm really hopeful that in the next few years, with all of these teams being put together with really talented game developers, that the
Mhm.
projects that are going to come out are going to help get rid of the stigma, build trust with the technology. Um, but yeah, I
Yeah.
think the scams
Um,
are really hurting it, and people are still trying to understand what play and earn like as a model looks like and what it feels like, and it's different, but it's really interesting.
Yeah, I went to a talk at a conference and I really liked what he says. He said we're at like the renaissance for the blockchain. You don't realize you're in the renaissance until after the renaissance. So the renaissance is like the rebirth. So like in the renaissance it was like hell, like people dying and just everything all over the place. But after, what happened after was amazing, like in terms of art, like everything flourishing. And I think this is any like technology, literally, this always happens. People are always skeptical. They always think it's a scam. And then a couple years later, would you look at that? It's it's commonplace and people are
Mm.
using it. And we're still very early. There's a lot of work to be done in this space and in the game space as well, like monetizing video games. And I think blockchain will help with this, introduce new avenues for monetization.
Mhm.
And I think it's just going to be really interesting. I don't think there are any like, I don't think game dev and blockchain technology right now is really, if there's anything too grand going on right now, because we're still pretty early. But I
Yeah.
think in a couple years, we'll see more great, actually great projects come out
Yeah.
um, the space. So
Yeah, definitely. That's awesome, and that's really exciting to hear that you're pursuing that space. Is there any other like initiatives that you're kind of building, or is the YouTube channel and then this Anza kind of the two pillars?
these are the two main pillars, and I am trying to work on some side projects here and there. Um, some of them I won't
to be to be
um,
announced.
to be announced. Yes, indeed. Um, but yeah, those are the two main ones that I'm working on right now. Yeah, which is a
Awesome.
lot. I'm going
I
crazy.
think I th- I think I saw a tweet that you put out like a week ago or something that said by the end of the year you hope to have 100,000 subscribers on YouTube. Is that right?
Yeah, that's
What's
my goal.
your that's an awesome goal, and I hope if you're listening to this that you help Sam reach that goal by going to subscribe
Thank
to her
you.
right now. But do you have any big plans for how to achieve that, or are you just going to kind of continue to do more of the same of what you've been doing?
um, as I say, I usually go with the flow. So I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna increase my video output because I'm not uploading enough to reach that goal. I think making a multiplayer series will help a lot, and I also want to do more of those entertainment value videos, which I think will also help because those get you the most audience.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, because not unfortunately, but in my case, um, but you know, if I want to get to that rate, I will have to do those kind of videos, which isn't
Yeah.
bad to do it, but
You've got to move that needle from, 30% entertainment to
to 100,
50% at least.
a
Yeah,
100%.
100% for the next 12 months, and then you can start teaching
No
again.
more tutorials, guys. Sorry.
Only memes. Yeah. I wanna see you like screaming into like a microphone so that it's peaking and like
I used to do that. I
because
used to have a gaming channel.
that's what Danny did, and for the trailer of, I can't the was it the crab game? Like, the crab game trailer, it's complete it's almost the least amount of production quality that you deliver is the right amount for
Yeah.
maximum entertainment value.
Yeah, or yeah. I just make myself a scary game and then I'll just scream as I get scared.
Yeah, that's pretty funny, self-inflicted s I've made my own ho worst feared horror game.
Nightmare. Watch me
There you go.
play it. Totally not clickbait
Yeah.
thumbnail or title at all.
That's awesome. I'm excited to see what kind of content you put out.
Thank you.
Aside from content, do you have ambitions for certain games that you want to create that are maybe of a bigger scale that might require more team members, whether it's more programmers or artists or designers. Do you have those kind of ideas on your notepad, or is it still pretty much just tutorials and content and indie stuff?
Um, well, I do want to do that parkour multiplayer game,
Hmm.
but I didn't really think of it as like having a whole team. I just like something to do on the side.
Yeah.
And well, actually, I guess I'll say the other project that we're looking.
Exclusive, exclusive.
Well, I put it on my Twitter, but I went to ETH Amsterdam and we submitted a project called the DAO verse, which I
Cool.
don't know if it classifies. Yeah, it could be a game. Yeah, it's a game. But it's like it was a prototype, but we built kind of this little level where you can onboard decentralized organizations called
Hmm.
DAOs, and in a gamified like 3D way. So you can like walk through this environment and instead of like doing it normally on a 2D screen where you're like, oh, do this and this and this, look at the social media, learn more about what our organization does. We wanted to gamify it. And so right now I have like two of them that helped me in Amsterdam were kind of continuing the project. So I think that's a game in a
Hmm.
way. And it's going to be cool. And it's going to be multiplayer. And you can kind of meet people in your organization online and it'll
Yeah.
connect to the blockchain. So,
That sounds really innovative, and it kind of delves into this topic that is really interesting, and that's just about what is a game. And with things like Facebook turning to Meta and people really investing into these virtual worlds, it's
mm,
really interesting because you mentioned like gamifying it so that it's not in a 2D screen, but it's in like a 3D space. It is really interesting how kind of game developers are now valued in this kind of broader retail, I don't
mhm.
know, marketing. It's yeah, like creating a virtual world might not necessarily be a game. It just might be a walking simulator, but you in like a multiplayer
Yeah.
experience, but it's not necessarily a game, as like what people would usually be defined.
Think,
That's that.
yeah.
Yeah. What's your definition of a game?
A game is an interactive story slash something you can interact with.
Yeah,
That's literally it.
interactive media or like an
Yeah.
interactive
And
experience. Yeah.
yeah, it doesn't even have to be on the computer. Like, I play a board game. I'm
Yeah. Yeah.
interacting with it and
With
it's
actions.
doing
Yeah.
something in response to my interaction. So like the
Yeah.
Netflix series, I think it's Black Mirror or something, where you can choose the path that you want to take.
Yeah.
That's I think I consider that a game because you're kind of choosing what happens in the
Hmm.
story. And yeah, I kind of ripped off this definition from a class I took in college.
Yeah, no,
He
that's a
spent
good.
like two whole classes talking about what is a game.
That
What
was
does
your
it
moment to
mean?
really lean into it and say, like, book me as a keynote speaker. I know, I know what the future is going to be.
No, he had way more knowledge on game design than I did. Been in vain.
Yeah, no,
Um,
that's awesome, and it's really cool that you're working on that. I hope for the best, and I feel like that's a product that would
Thank
be
you.
really valuable to a lot of um, DAO projects out there,
Mhm.
to engage their community in a different way. All the best.
Yeah, and you can also join it if you're not part of a DAO, and just
Yeah.
like explore the world and have fun with other people.
Yeah, that's exciting. Just a couple more questions before we close this off.
Yeah.
Just curious, like what kind of games do you play or did you play? And are you still kind of a gamer?
Um, so I played all the time, first person, third person shooters, mostly, yeah. Platformers, games that don't require thinking. So just like run and shoot, competitive, not competitive as in like I actually play ranked because that stresses me out. But like where I can like compete against other players, like sniper. I would always choose a sniper in Call of Duty. Like, just try to be the best of like,
Yeah,
oh, I can do it with a sniper. I feel so cool.
yeah,
Um, even, even though it's just a
yeah.
game.
No, that's cool. Do you play games these days? Do you find you have enough time, or is that something that was, a thing of the past?
Yeah, I don't have as much time to play anymore, which is unfortunate because I bought the PlayStation.
I see
It's-
the Rock
I
Band
feel
drum
so
set
bad.
there. Is
Oh
that
no,
a
that's an
drum set?
actual drum set.
Oh, is it? Oh, yeah, it's
It's
one
an
of those
electric.
electric drums. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, I've never had Rock Band. I've always wanted one, so I got one for myself for Christmas.
That's
So,
cool. That's awesome.
um, but yeah, and I just watch anime when I eat now.
Yeah,
Dragon Ball.
nice. Is there like a genre of games or like types of games that you kind of want to see more of in the world that you think aren't being explored enough?
Um, I think definitely education, like something that integrates learning into it. There's not a lot of games that do that
Mm.
currently.
There's a
It's
lot
all
of people
like,
trying to, but it's a hard thing to
yeah,
crack.
yeah, but I haven't seen like a popular
Mm.
education game where it's like you're actively learning. Like the point of the game is to learn about new things. I think some games do it well, like Minecraft, like inherently with their
Mm.
redstone system. Um, I don't think, but Minecraft isn't like an education game per se, or like that's what they market it as. But
Yeah, that's an interesting discussion as well because if you become like an education first game, I feel like it's very hard
it's
to
not,
market.
yeah.
Whereas if you're a fun and entertainment first game, it's
Hmm.
easier, but then education becomes secondary. Um, do you have like an idea of what that might look like? Like a game that becomes mainstream to the level that you would hope. What that education game might look like? Like, you mentioned
Um,
Minecraft, but, like, yeah, like, what kinda lessons would it teach?
well, it depends.
It could be anything, really.
Yeah, it depends on what you want to teach. I think the presentation and like the rewards that they give out would have to be very important though, like making players feel like, they've accomplished the task. Like you're
Mm,
looting something and you're like, "Yes, I beat the boss and I get this." Like
yeah.
that satisfaction with the dopamine hit,
S
I think it's important. To,
would you not consider, like, a Udemy course that, shows you your progress, like, enough of a gamified educational experience? No, you're thinking something like 3D with bosses and, like, art assets and,
it doesn't have to be
um
3D, but more
yeah,
interactive, yeah.
yeah, yeah,
I
more
I mean,
interactive.
Udemy is known for people buying the courses and never finishing. They're like, "Oh, yes, a $10 course," and then they, like, never start or, like, they never finish it.
Yeah,
Um, so obviously there's an issue with,
yeah,
actual retention rates and
yeah,
getting people to finish the course. So I think we need a little more oomph in
yeah.
it, you know?
More fun, yeah, we need, yeah,
Yeah.
more interactivity. I like that, that's a good way to put it. Awesome, yeah, no, this has been a really, really fun chat. I love your
Yeah,
attitude
as well.
and the kind of, topics that are really important to you, teaching people the concepts of game dev rather than just like, showing them the code, and I love
Mhm.
your interest in wanting to make the tutorials entertaining and not just you're not just giving the information, but you do care about how you sound, how you project yourself, the quality of your videos and the quality of the editing. It's awesome that you kind of have that all in mind. So
Thank you.
and I am really excited that you're exploring kind of Web3 technology. Just as someone who is now in the space and I want to see that stigma go away, it's really
Mhm.
encouraging hearing the kind of projects that you're working on, and I hope we can look back on this in a couple years' time and see that it
Mhm.
was, the renaissance of new technology. Um,
Oh, yeah. We definitely will.
yeah.
There's no
So
doubt.
I wanna thank you for your time, and if anyone listening is interested in following Sam, you can find her on YouTube at Sam Yam or on Twitter at SamYam_YouTube. And there's also Patreon at Sam Y. Is it Sam YQ?
G. Yeah.
Oh, Sam YG. My bad.
Every
And
other name was taken.
I'll link to all that in the description anyway. You don't need to know exactly what letters are there. I'll
Thanks.
also find a link to the Dalverse and the Enza, if anyone's interested in kind of following through on that. But yeah, as a last question before we head off, I would love to know what's one piece of advice you'd give to someone wanting to start doing tutorials on YouTube, that you kind of wished you heard when you started.
Um, the best advice I can give is just to put something out there and not worry as much on the quality. Because what happens is that a lot of people kind of get caught up on the quality of the video and they try to make it perfect. And then when they release it, it flops
Mhm.
or they never release it or it just takes forever to release. So I think just putting something out is taking a good first step. So don't worry about. I tend to get caught up in the details. I'm should listen to my own advice more, but you just post something out there, see what happens. Like my first videos were all a mess when I started out. Like to get to the editing right now, I had to go through a lot of years. Not saying it's gonna take a lot of years, but it just took me a lot of years because I was a child and I was I didn't know what I was doing. But know that the first videos that you put out aren't probably gonna be great, and that's fine. And you just wanna find out what's good, like what content that you wanna create, and then kind of diverge there, and then increase quality, then get better equipment as you get more people in, and you'll adapt in that way. So that's the best thing I can say.
Yeah, it's awesome. And I mean, you've been in the YouTube game for like 10 years, and I'm sure you've had a lot of pages and channels and videos that you've explored during that time, before you found kind of this thread. Um, is that right? Would you say that? Yeah. Oh, good. Um,
Sorry, my mom came home.
no, that's all good.
Can you repeat that?
Yeah, it's fine. We're in the final seconds of the show anyway. Um, I was saying, yeah, so you've been in the YouTube game for, over 10 years. I'm sure you've had a lot of pages and a lot of different channels and video types that have led to this moment of
Yeah.
you finding your community and finding your groove.
Mhm.
So yeah, it takes time, but it's awesome to see
Yeah.
that you've found it.
As long as you don't give up, you know? And I definitely took a break. Like during college, I just stopped uploading for the most part. But I think if you keep on going, if you're passionate about YouTube,
Mhm,
and you'll get there. You know, you'll find what you're good at.
mhm.
You just have to keep going, which is hard because it's such a hard space to be in. But it's fun. It's fun, you
Yeah.
know?
Awesome, Sam. Thank you so much for your time today and the advice and perspective that you shared. I hope you have a good rest of your day. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I'm happy to be here and nice to meet you, Carl. And thanks for all the awesome questions that you asked.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Zero to Play podcast. We hope you learned something about game development, the games industry as a whole, or the future of games. Follow us on Twitter at Zero to Play and let us know what you found valuable. Take care and see you in the next episode.